Assalamu alaikum. So today, let's get on with the reconstruction. It's such an exciting book. And when I read deeper, I go deeper. It really challenges me still. And that's something that I want to get across in these videos. That Iqbal's work is transformative. And I'm going to say that again and again because it's something that I passionately believe, that Iqbal is a guide to specifically Western educated Muslims living within the system, as it were, of modernity. That includes people now in Pakistan and India and throughout the Muslim world. Modernity has changed us profoundly, changed the way we move, changed our attitude to life. And as a result of that, our thinking has changed. And I think Iqbal kind of foresaw what would actually occur to the Western educated Muslim. So this is why his work is just so important. And if we go and carry on with where I left off, I just read that in the interest of securing a complete vision of reality, sense perception must be supplemented by the perception of what the Quran describes as fu'ad or qalb. And he recites a Quranic ayat, God has made everything which we have created most good, and began the creation of man and clay, then ordained his progeny from germs of life, from sorry water, then shaped him, and breathed of his spirit unto him, and gave you hearing and seeing and heart. What little thanks do you return? The heart is a kind of inner intuition or insight, which in the beautiful words of Rumi feeds on the rays of the sun and brings us into contact with aspects of reality other than those open to sense perception. It is, according to the Quran, something which sees, and its reports, if properly interpreted, are never false. We must not, however, regard it as a mysterious special faculty. It's rather a mode of dealing with reality in which sensation, in the physiological sense of the word, does not play any part. Yet, the vista of experience thus open to us is as real and concrete as any other experiences. To describe it as psychic or mystical or supernatural doesn't detract from its value as an experience. To the primitive man, all experience was supernatural. Prompted by the immediate necessities of life, he was driven to interpret his experience, and out of this interpretation gradually emerged nature, quote unquote, in our sense of the word. The total reality which enters our awareness and appears on interpretation as an empirical fact has other ways of invading our consciousness and offers further opportunities of interpretation. The revealed and mystic literature of mankind bears ample testimony to the fact that religious experience has been too enduring and dominant in the history of mankind to be rejected as a mere illusion. If we look at the time that Iqbal was writing, then the complete ascendancy, well, not complete, of the physicalists, of the logical positivists, of the Vienna Circle hadn't really occurred by that point. And still there was a respectable pushback against the idea that empiricism in the physical sense of what we, of normal sensation of physicality was the only basis of knowledge that was worthy of exploring. So, and especially the pragmatists who insisted that the physicalists were being dogmatic in refusing to investigate consciousness or anything like that because of its so-called unreality, they still had a prominence. So that the next part of this section will deal with William James and and by extension other pragmatists and Professor MacDonald and the Institute, I think, of Psychic Research. And that then wasn't considered woo-woo. It was actually a respectable discipline of inquiry. Yet after the Second World War, this became considered almost heretical. The idea that you study human anecdotal experience was considered to be something almost blasphemous to the contemporary status quo of what science then and pretty much to today considers. As here, this is not just a pushback particularly of Iqbal. He is in quite illustrious company at that point prior to the Second World War. And so he carries on anyway. There seems to be no reason then to accept the normal level of human experience as fact and reject its other levels as mystical and emotional. The facts of religious experience are facts among other facts of human experience. And in the capacity of yielding knowledge by interpretation, one fact is as good as another. Nor is there anything irreverent, not pious, in critically examining this region of human experience. The Prophet of Islam was the first critical observer of psychic phenomena. Bukhari and other traditionalists have given us a full account of his observation of the psychic Jewish youth Ibn Sayyid, whose ecstatic moods attracted the Prophet's notice. He tested him, questioned him, and examined him in his various moods. Once he hid himself behind the stem of a tree to listen to his mutterings. The boy's mother, however, warned him of the approach of the Prophet. Thereupon the boy immediately shook off his mood, and the Prophet remarked, if she had let him alone, the thing would have been cleared up. The Prophet's Prophet's companions, some of them who were present during the course of this first psychological observation in the history of Islam, and even later traditionalists who took care to record this important fact, entirely misunderstood the significance of this attitude and interpreted it in their own innocent matter. Professor MacDonald, who seems to have no idea of the fundamental psychological differences between the mystic and the prophetic consciousness, finds humor enough in this picture of one prophet try to investigate another after the method of the Society for Psychical Research. So that was set up by William James and or that group at least. A better appreciation of the spirit of the Quran, which, as I will show in a subsequent lecture, initiated the cultural movements terminating in the birth of the modern empirical attitude, would have led the professor to have seen something remarkably suggestive in the Prophet's observation of the psychic Jew. However, the first Muslim to see the meaning and the value of the Prophet's attitude was Ibn Khaldun, who approached the content of mystic consciousness in a more critical spirit and very nearly reached the first modern hypothesis of the subliminal selves. This is a reference to Freud and the beginning of the investigation which was occurring at that time into the unconscious and the subconscious, etc. And carries on. As Professor MacDonald says, Ibn Khaldun had some most interesting psychological ideas and would have probably been in close sympathy with Mr. William James' varieties of religious experience. Modern psychology. So, as I was saying earlier, we have to see that this is distinct from what we now consider modern psychology. So what he's calling modern psychology is now kind of outdated psychology. Modern psychology has only recently begun to realize the importance of the careful study of the contents of mystical consciousness, and we are yet in possession of a really effective scientific method to analyze the contents of non-rational modes of consciousness. So yeah, he's talking about obviously Freud and that whole generation, but also William James, the pragmatists, John Dewey, etc., etc. Whereas actually maybe he had envisaged that this would carry on, but with the Second World War, then things radically changed with the dismissal of German thought, and then also the discoveries of DNA, Francis Crick. So Francis Crick is great, a biologist, probably one of the most famous of all the biologists because of his discovery of DNA. Yet he was very rigidly epiphenomenalist. So he believed that basically consciousness is kind of an after effect of materiality, that it's almost a secretion of the brain in the same way that the gallbladder secretes gall, a fluid that helps with digestion. He just saw consciousness and the whole kind of cohort of psychologists and biologists after him really saw anything like a dream or a mystical or a psychic consciousness as just illusionary and unworthy of scientific study. So this careful study, which Iqbal foresaw would happen into the contents of mystical consciousness, have really not yet occurred. With the time at my disposal, it is not possible to undertake an extensive inquiry into the history and the various degrees of mystical consciousness in the point of its richness and its vividness. All I can do is offer a few. Sorry, the helicopter's distracting me. I'm thinking, should I carry on or put it on? I don't know. Anyway, we'll see. So it's gone now. All that I can do is offer a few general observations only on the main characteristics of the mystic experience. So that's quite a lot, and we'll do that another day. So thank you. I do think this is a really important area to study. Iqbal, consciousness, and the reason that I'm making these videos is that so at least one person can start to engage in a conversation, and that would really be a great thing. So if you engage, make some comments, because it's really encouraging when people like and engage. It makes you feel that actually, I know I don't have the greatest skills in delivery, and I'm not a trained authority on Iqbal or anything, but this is a discussion, and I really just urge, and I look forward to the time when people kind of will be able to think about what Iqbal is saying and to discuss what Iqbal is saying. I do find that we're all kind of tentatively worried about thought, about thinking anything kind of out of the box, and afraid of what people will say. certainly like in Pakistan, I think quite a few of my viewers are in Pakistan, but there, if you do say something, you know, there are consequences. But the progress of mankind, or I mean, the progress of Islam has always been, there's an element of risk, thought, thinking something new, innovating a new direction. There's always an element of risk, of going out on a limb, of being excommunicated in a sense. All the great thinkers really kind of have been worried and challenged by that, but that in a sense is part of what creates the calling to think, the calling to think about things, to try and find an authenticity that's true to our age and true to our place, rather than just kind of accepting the status quo. Because it's only through being authentic that we can actually kind of create some new way out. Obviously, we're in a problem, and the problem was caused by the level of thought that we are currently within. And so the only way out of that is to engage in new thought. And I don't think that has to be really radical and totally unique. But I do feel, as I repeated myself, that actually within Iqbal, that there is a great heroicism of thinking. That Iqbal was a heroic thinker, and we have to channel into that. So anyway, and part of that is just liking and subscribing and commenting and kind of bringing your head up above the parapet. So on that anyway, shukran, assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.